Hey guys, thanks for joining us again on another version of The Deciding Factor. I'm John.
And I'm Alton.
And together we come up with some of the craziest topics you can imagine. And we'd love for you to check out some of our older videos or podcasts if you're listening. Make sure to click like and subscribe to us. Obviously, down below, I've got a special guest as well as intern Barbara's back. Say hi.
Hi, guys.
So stay tuned. Today's topic, we're going to talk about podcasting and if it is in fact the new hidden marketing tool. Guys, this is the deciding factor.
Everyday life issues broken down to help you build your own opinions on the issues that matter most. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, this is The Deciding Factor with your host, Alton Hill and John Herzog.
Hi guys, welcome back to The Deciding Factor. As stated below, I've got a guy named Phil with me today. He's actually going to walk us through today's topic of, is podcasting the new marketing tool that businesses should be using? So let me introduce you to him. Phil has been a podcaster for 10 years. He actually comes to us from Liverpool, United Kingdom. He also is the host and owner of Billionaires in Boxers. It's also a business growth coach is what he is. He's also a top 100 podcaster and a mastermind mentor. His dream is to empower 1 billion entrepreneurs and that Billionaires in Boxers becomes the world's most recognized entrepreneurial influence broadcasting network in the world. Phil, I know it's a much different time over there, but welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really good to be here.
Absolutely. So just to fill you in, you got 2 Texans here, a crazy Washington State girl down below next to you. And man, we're talking across the globe is where we're going today.
I love it.
Having you on here. So that's awesome. And I've got to apologize. My friend Alton here, he hasn't shaved in God knows how long, so he's a little out of control.
I love it. Actually, you know, I've got some beard envy. I was saying in our virtual green room when we were talking earlier, like I can't do it. I look like a Burns victim when I try and grow a beard, unfortunately. So it's not something that I can pull off, not with any real success.
Yeah. Do you have at least any gray in your beard like I do?
No, I have ginger, and I don't even know where that comes from. So I just kind of have like this brown, black ginger beard with like alopecia patches. So
Nice.
it's really not a good look for me.
Oh man.
You know, it's it's funny that you say that because I haven't. So I'll make the story short. I quit my 9-to-5 going on like 3 years ago. And so now I realize like, oh, I got to be a salesman and I need to look proper. So I haven't had a beard in almost 3 years.
Mm.
And then I was actually in this mastermind with it's like going over a lot of Bob Proctor material and stuff. And we were covering like what's holding you back and all these things. And anyway, and I kind of uncovered this concept that I wasn't really being as authentic as I could be. And I was like imagining in my own head, like if I had a beard, like people wouldn't love me. I mean, look, I know I need some therapy, but like through the class, that was one of the things. And I was like, you know what? I'm growing a beard. That's it. I like a beard and I'm going to grow it. So there.
No, I love it.
Yeah. So that's my
I really
story.
do. In fact, funny you should mention that. I actually got to speak with Bob not so long ago, a few months ago.
Really?
Because I know
Yes.
Bob was in a film which was done by a good friend and mentor of mine called Doug Vermeer, and it was a sequel to, or prequel, I can never remember which one, to the Secret movie, and it was a movie called How Thoughts Become Things. And to help them promote that movie, I was doing interviews with Bob Doyle, Marie Diamond, Doug Vermeeren, Travis Fox, Bob Proctor. And Bob at the time was just bringing out his latest workshop for the paradigm shift. So I got to have a cool
Yes.
conversation with him with that. And I joined in with like the 7-day, I think it was, virtual course for the paradigm shift. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think we all have things like that in terms of no one's going to take me seriously if I have loads of tattoos, no one's, I have to wear a shirt and tie to get a sale done. And when you start to realize that a lot of those things exist only in your head, and I've never lost a sale because I have tattoos, and you're never going to lose a sale because you have a beard. It's quite liberating. It really is. So I'm glad that you did that course, and I'm glad that you did that stuff with him. He's a good guy.
Wow. So, let me kind of jump in here. So explain to everybody that may not know, but what is Billionaires in Boxers?
It's a good question. So Billionaires in Boxers kind of takes two forms, I guess. We've got our broadcasting side of our business, which is done for you podcasting for businesses, literally spoon feeding people that kind of want to do the techniques and tactics that we do when it comes to podcasting, but they really don't want to have to learn how to edit. They don't want to suddenly become their own publicist and have to book guests and figure out whose shows they should be on and all that kind of stuff. So it's turn up and talk is what we call it on that side of our business. We also get involved in a lot of movies and live events and television shows, our own and other people's, but it's always around empowering content. So for me, my passion very much lies in taking kind of the best business mentors and entrepreneurs from the established markets and introducing them to the emerging markets, and then introducing the amazing people who are coming out of the emerging markets into the more established markets. And I love playing that matchmaker role. The second part of what we do is my coaching business, which is primarily my bread and butter. So I'm a surveyor by trade, chartered surveyor by trade, although I never got the chartered bit because I didn't do it for long enough. And it's a true story. But the coaching really came about completely organically. I never intended on being a coach. That's the gospel truth. I owned 2 service-based businesses that when I left the corporate world, I had zero idea how to win clients. Like no idea. I'd always had a sales team there doing it for me and a marketing team with a big budget that just used to turn up with leads. Like I didn't know how to do this stuff myself. I didn't want to be the guy that suddenly started cold calling, because in my previous life, I'd been the guy who was getting like 10 to 15 of those calls a day, and I detested them. So I didn't want to become that person. I didn't know how to kind of become a social media influencer. I'm not an attractive, 20 something year old girl that can suddenly get loads of followers on Instagram. So I really found myself in a pickle, and I describe it as sort of finding the business cheat codes, which was I just kind of decided I don't have to work with the people in my local market. I can work with whoever the hell I want, wherever I want. I'm going to work with people globally that I resonate with. And the way that I'm going to reach them is through podcasting. I'd been podcasting a number of years by this point, and my technique was not subtle. I wasn't trying to sell anything to anybody. It was just digital relationship building. Make a list of the people I want to work with, invite them onto a podcast, and let the universe take care of the rest. The ones that I resonate with and resonate with me, something will happen. The ones that I don't, well, done me a favor, because they're the clients I shouldn't be working with anyway.
So why boxers? Why are we in boxers on that?
So the Billionaires in Boxers name, I always wish I had a much cooler answer for this, like a really sexy answer. And because people like really resonate with this brand name, but I always have to just be really honest about it. We were doing a radio show that was in Southern Africa, and it was on somebody else's business network. And then that got picked up by a TV network, and they said, look, you're going to need a name for the show. And I was like, I have no idea. Like, what do I call a TV show? And everything I said, it was like, no. So I just started getting a bit silly with it. And I was like, Billionaires in Boxers, because I'm growing my global empire from home and I rarely put on pants. And it was just like, that's it. That's the one. That's what we're calling the show. And then we started to get some PR and some press for the TV show before it came out. And everybody was just really resonating with this name. And like everybody was giving me different versions of what they think it means to them. And I was like, I love this. Like people are seriously resonating with this brand. I love it. I think it's a cool, funny name, and it's something I'm proud of. But I just decided to kind of rebrand all of my businesses under that Billionaires in Boxers brand, because it's kind of the one that most people associate me with now.
So I was telling Alton that I had you coming on the show, and when I first read everything, I was like, yeah, he's the guy that came up with Billionaires in a Box. And then I started looking back, and I'm like, no, my dyslexia kicked in. It's Billionaires in Boxers.
Yeah, that's my funeral care plan. No, I don't have billionaires in a box. I mean, I've met some billionaires. How sure I am they'd let me put them in a box, I'm not quite sure. Let's see how that friendship develops. Yeah, you know, it was more about the fact that we're all trying to kind of strive to get to that level. And when we first started that name, I didn't have any billionaires in our network. Now we actually have several. And you know, I'm fortunate enough that they are some of my mentors, and wow, do you learn some serious stuff from them, including that at that stage, money just really isn't that important. You know, you've got to have something else that gets you out of bed. There's got to be something that resonates with your work and what you do, because once you achieve a certain level of financial success, that's no longer a motivator. And if that's what you've been pinning your hope on, you know, I want to make $1 million a year, I want to make $5 million a year. Well, what happens when you get there? Are you just going to lose all motivation for everything you do? Whereas that's why I have such a big goal. You know, our goal is to empower 1 billion entrepreneurs. And that sounds massive, but when you factor in that there are 7 billion people across the emerging markets that we're only just breaking into, that are suddenly finding themselves with much better connectivity, 1 billion people doesn't sound like that many people to reach. You know, The Secret movie, we were just talking about that. The Secret movie reached 500 million people. So technically I only need 2 Secret movies and I'm job done.
Nice.
So tell us, Phil, when you talk about empowering people, like break that down for us. What does that really mean for you?
Yes. So for me, it's probably 2 things. It's as a business owner, I found myself in a position that I think a lot of people do. Now, I specialize in professional services businesses because they tend to have intangible products. You know, they're selling their knowledge and their personality and their experience. But really, this works for any business or any new business. That's just the ones that I happen to resonate with, probably as a surveyor and because I've always had service-based businesses. But, you know, people spend so much time having to focus on, how do I win clients? How do I retain clients? How, you know, do I do the race to the bottom on fees in terms of my competitors to try and pip them to the post that way? You know, how do I show up at exhibitions and events and social media and all this stuff? And they're probably spending about 30% of their time, if they're lucky, actually focused on the stuff that they're best at. You know, the things that they've actually spent years training to do and have the experience to do. And that's really sad, because people aren't living their authentic lives. They're not being able to be the authentic version of themselves because there's constantly a stress around paying the bills. And actually, that doesn't get any better when you start to hire people. Like, most people associate that with solopreneurs. You know, as somebody who employs a number of people globally now, I can tell you that stress includes paying other people's salaries. Now I've just got more families to worry about and more people's rent to worry about. So, you know, for the first level for us is always helping people to break free of that. Now, for some people, that's enough. Like, all they want is the ability to be able to do 2 or 3 days work a week, earn plenty of money, and spend the rest of their time with their family. Awesome. I am never going to judge that. I love the fact that that's your aim, 100%. And we help people get there. The other part of that for me is about helping people to become recognized as an influencer and an authority. But that's not the title. Like, there are so many people that call themselves an influencer, and that bugs me, because you can't call yourself an influencer. Somebody else has to call you an influencer. And you can't become an influencer until you have the time to invest in influencing people. I mean, the clue is in the name. So who is it that you are influencing, and who is it that you are empowering and helping? So when I talk about empowering, it's really helping business owners to escape the kind of stresses of what I call a roller coaster business, which is, yay, I'm rich. Oh my God, and I'm never going to make money ever again. It's getting
That's never happened to me.
Brother, it's happened to every single one of us. I'm not buying that. There's some gray in your beard for a reason. But and then the other part of that is, okay, now you have this newfound time. Whether you want to call it a socialist attitude or what, I don't know. But my attitude is that you have a responsibility when you're in a position to do so, to turn around and give that person on the ladder behind you a hand up to the next step. That's your responsibility. I have a saying that I use all the time, which is the day I stop learning is the day I stop earning. And I essentially just teach what I know. So let's say I'm now on level 5 or 6. I'm teaching 1 to 3 at the moment. And when I figured out level 7, I'll start teaching 4, 5, and 6, and that's the way it's going to be, because I'll kind of keep bringing people and say, okay, you're now at this stage. Let's get you onto this. Now let's get you the TV show. Now let's get you the keynote speaking event. Now let's get you the book deal, which is actually a lot of the work we do.
But being an influencer is very time consuming.
It is.
There's way too much to do.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's exactly it. I mean, being an influencer as well is there's always people always see the positive stuff about being an influencer, right? So I'm not going to lie. I have some really nice stuff, like companies sending me microphones to check out that cost like a few $100 and I didn't have to buy them. Getting people who want to appear on the TV show saying, listen, I'll give you a year's free subscription to what I do and give you a 20% affiliate on anything that we sell via the show if you just bring me on. Like, that's cool stuff. Like, that's nice, but you still have to keep your integrity with it, because otherwise you just start dining out on all these free lunches kind of thing. But the other side of that coin is that there are plenty of people who are there to take a shot at you as well. The second you put your head above and say, hey, this is what I think, you got people going, no, you're an idiot because of this, this, and this. And people don't see that bit. They see the nice, shiny, it's like celebrities, I guess. And I'm not describing myself as a celebrity in the slightest. I'm miles off that. But, people say, well, look at them. They got given that free dress that cost like $10,000 to wear at that event. Yeah, and they also got 20,000 people insulting them on their social media in the last month. Like, give them the dress,
That does seem worth it. So I'm curious, you're describing this really rather amazing, empowering picture of business. How has COVID affected this for you? I mean, has it affected your business personally, or how you train other people? A lot of people seem to be upside down right now. So
it's a really good question. So, in a lot of ways, like it's completely changed everything. Some things terribly, like off a cliff kind of terrible, and other things in a really positive way. So I still own a staffing-based business, a headhunting firm that practically died in March. I mean, like, this thing was do not resuscitate. It was finished. And that's only just started to see some traction again now. So that firm specializes in real estate and surveying positions, particularly across borders. So you can imagine how well that was going during a time that nobody was allowed to go anywhere.
Right.
That was a good business choice. So, I kind of took the analogy of, everyone's always going to need real estate. Real estate's never going to go anywhere. And then suddenly this happens and it was like, oh, well, turns out I'm an idiot. So
real estate doesn't go anywhere, but when people aren't going anywhere, they don't buy it.
Precisely, exactly that. Nor are they building it. So that was a real problem, and that side of my business definitely died a death. And then my Billionaires in Boxers side of the business, when it comes to the coaching and the done for you service, that kind of picked up at a rate that I kind of couldn't handle, if I'm completely honest, because all the people that had kind of said, this sounds like a really good idea, but I don't think we're ready for it yet, suddenly came back and were like, is it too late to start a podcast? Is it too late to build relationships with people digitally? Because I can't go to these exhibitions anymore. And my cold call team are all at home and nobody's reading my emails because everyone's stressed about this. And all the things that they were doing before had now kind of dried up. So they were ready for something new. Now, if I may, what actually had a really profound effect on me was I caught COVID earlier in the year. So I caught COVID in sort of end of April, beginning of May time. I didn't require hospitalized treatment, so it wasn't as bad for me as it was for many other people, which is a real blessing. Sort of 5 to 10 days in bed. But I'm still at the moment, bearing in mind it's now, 5 months later, something like that. I'm still have a diagnosis of chronic post-viral fatigue syndrome, which they're also classing as long COVID. I have like horrific fatigue. Like I'm only able to work 2-3 hours a day at a push. And like it's getting better slowly but surely, but I am not the person that I was. Like I've lost 25 kgs without trying.
Whoa.
Like I had horrific acid reflux. It made my asthma horrific. So I'm on all kinds of steroids for my chest. Like this was not a fun time. But what it did allow me to do was an exercise that has actually meant that I now say that catching COVID was the best thing that ever happened for me. Because I would never have done this exercise without it. And the exercise was to go to my customers and say, look, you guys know I'm a workaholic, right? You know I work all the hours that God sends. I can't do that right now. Like I've been in hospital twice in the last 8 weeks with a suspected heart attack because of what's going over my chest. Like I can't do this. So if I only have a couple of hours a day to commit to you guys, where do you get the most value from what I do? And unequivocally, everybody said, it's your coaching. It's like the one-on-one strategy stuff. It's being able to pick up the phone to you and say, here's my problem, or here's my idea. What can we do about this? And then it's the connections of people. And I love being a connector because it's not all about what I know. It's like, here's my bit and here's a load of people that can help you with it. Because that's how I do business. So in that respect, COVID has been incredible for my business because our coaching side of our business has rocketed. We're saying no to far more people than we're saying yes to. Digital relationship building is more important now than it's ever been. But there was a period where, and this is why I speak from significant experience, one of my cash cows had been my recruitment business. This business would comfortably do $150,000, $200,000 a year without really blinking an eye, just based on the experience that we had. And that died overnight. But I still had the entire team to pay a salary. I still had, and there was times when the salary that was being paid, the money that was being paid to my staffing business was paying the salaries of my BIB media team too, because it was like propping those guys up. Yeah. So to lose that, I think probably 6 weeks into COVID, just before I got diagnosed, I must have been $15,000 in debt comfortably, with no end in sight. Mm-hmm. And there were times when I really didn't think we were going to get out of that. So to be sat here in a position that we're in today, where actually our business is looking better than ever, and we're saying no to more business than we say yes to, that's why I'm so passionate about this. Plus I'm seeing what other people's businesses are doing globally, where they're, 5xing, 10xing their business. They're now winning clients all over the world that they wouldn't have been able to work with before, that are prepared to pay them a premium for their services. And, this stuff isn't rocket science. Like, it's just relationship building. Like, somewhere along the line, we've all tried to do sales automation and social media marketing and all that kind of stuff, and we forgot the most important thing, which is that people buy people, and they like to do business with people that they resonate with.
Absolutely. Quick question though, a little off topic. It's not about podcasting, but how are you handling your delegation? Because a lot of people that I've run across, or even in schooling, actually being able to do that is one of the biggest struggles. Mm-hmm. So how are you keeping your time and still being able to cover more customers, like you said?
Yeah, so I guess, I'm quite blessed that I have a good team around me. And many of the teams started off commission only. They didn't start off on a salary, which I think makes a big difference, because anyone will say yes to getting a job and a nice high paid salary. But when the chips are down, they're nowhere to be seen, really, because they're not really that loyal. They're there because you're paying them to be there. But when somebody's come on this journey with you for a slice of the pie, you tend to find that actually they are committed to the cause, and they're there because that message resonates with them. So they don't consider themselves an employee, nor do I consider them an employee. They are a partner of the business, and they just do their bit. That said, there are two people who were with me at the beginning of COVID that are no longer with me because they didn't show up when everybody else showed up. And they did let me down. And I think I had to respect them enough and myself enough to be able to say, let's not do this again. Let's do something different now. Because if you're not showing up, it's because you have doubts. And if you have doubts, you shouldn't be working with me. You should be doing something else. And I shouldn't have you in my team, because if you have doubts, then that's just going to bring negativity to what we're doing. And that's not what I'm about. So best of luck with whatever it is that you're going to go do. I'll give you a nice glowing references for all the hard work that you've done, but that's the end of the line.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. But how do you handle the customers? Like if they know BIB, right? They think of Phil. So
Yes.
how do you gently say, no, I don't have time to deal with you. You're going to deal with my partners.
Yeah, so I guess the joy of that is that they never really just had me. So from day dot, when people come in, like even our onboarding calls, I am rarely on an onboarding call by myself. I will be on an onboarding call with other members of my team to say, okay, here's my head of digital and here's this guy. And the reason that we're here is I'm going to do the strategy. They're going to implement it for you. And I'm going to be here to kind of project manage. I'm going to work one-on-one with you to make sure this happens. And this is the team that's going to be doing this work. It's kind of like, to use a property analogy, I'm the architect. I'm not going to be your foreman and your builder and your joiner like that. I'm not going to do all of that. There's a team of people there that will do that. My responsibility is to make sure that they have the tools that they need to do their job successfully and the blueprint to do it. Your responsibility is to work with me to make sure that we design that blueprint to the specification that you need.
Yeah. I love that. So Phil, you had to let me take a stab at John here. And you're doing a lot of empowering people and helping people grow. And it sounds like if you do your job right, they're going to have more leads. And so I love your question about the delegating. Tell us a couple of books that you may have read that you think have really helped you get to the next level, or maybe some books that when I said books, you were like, oh shoot, I need to think of books. What popped into your mind?
So the ones that popped into my mind straight away were, one of them might be a bit cliche, but it was the Jordan Belfort book, Way of the Wolf, when he talks about the straight line sales technique.
Okay.
That one definitely, because as much as there's a lot of fluff and bluster in that book, sorry if you're listening, Jordan, I love your work. It ultimately is about building relationships with people. We've all had sales calls where people have talked at you, whereas actually the best sales calls are the ones where you prompt and you guide somebody through to understand what it is that they want. Because then, people talk about objection handling in sales. Well, there's no objection handling if they've told you what they want, and you say, great. So if I can do this, this, and this, and it solves that problem for you, that's good, right? We're good to go. I mean, they can't then go, no, because they've just spent half an hour telling you that that's what they want. So that's definitely a good book. Another one which you may not have come across, it's by I'll call him a friend. We know each other pretty well now. A guy called Daniel Priestley. He's an Australian guy whose books I actually really love. He's another business coach. He's actually based in London. I think the book that I would start with is his first book, which is called Entrepreneur Revolution. And he's going to hate me for oversimplifying his book like this, but in essence, that is about trying to get away from this industrial revolution mindset of you go to school, you go to college, you go to university, you move to the city, you get a job, you work your way up, and then you get a pension, and then you die. Well, those jobs that existed for our grandparents and maybe even for some of our parents, where you spend 30, 40 years in the same company, those jobs just don't exist anymore. That's not the reality of what's happening. We see people with the nomadic lifestyle now of having that, Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week, laptop lifestyle, all this kind of stuff. Like the next generation of business, it's going to be small boutique agencies that work with contractors that can scale up to meet demand, but are also nimble and agile enough that there's only a few core people. So if you need to scale back down again, then you can work with whoever you want, wherever you want. You pick the clients that you want to work with. Like I have this conversation all the time with people, and it blows my mind how simplistic some of my advice is, but people go, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Like I had a client recently who he runs a service firm based in London, and he had 17,000 competitors that do what he does in London, right? Wow. 17,000. And he's like, I'm lowering my price. I'm doing free webinars. I paid this coach and he taught me to write an ebook and then start capturing the email addresses so I could market to these people. And I was like, whoa, hold up, right? how long is it going to take you to get to like 100,000 email database of your ideal clients? And he's like, oh, at least a year, and it's going to cost me thousands. And I was like, okay, so let's just look at this differently for a minute. Why don't you go and partner with two people that already have a database of 50,000 each in this industry, and you could have it this week? And then they could introduce you, and you could give them a percentage. It's going to cost you a hell of a lot less than advertising to get this thing, and you don't have to wait a year for it. You can have it this week. And secondly, you're not a tree, you're not rooted to the ground. Like, what? The 17,000 competitors in London don't work in London. Like, this surely this isn't rocket science. So we did some research into the market and found that in Melbourne and Sydney, there are 400 firms that do what he does. So he was able to almost double his prices. They love him for it. I mean, let's be honest, there's also the element of, oh, you worked in London? Great. You must know what you're talking about. I don't know how we've managed to get away with that kind of British attitude of, oh, you're from the UK, you must be good at business.
It's the accent.
Is
the
that
accent
what it is?
it makes it seem just like you know more than we do.
Do you know what? It's not true. So I actually don't work with many British clients for that very reason. Like, I enjoy working with people overseas, but that's, for me, that's more about, I love taking what I've made work in this market for the past 10 years and trying it out in different cultures and different environments. And, even when I moved to South Africa for the first time, when I was working in real estate, the South African real estate market is about 6 years behind that of the UK. So I rose to board level in the second largest real estate company in Africa in my early 20s, just by teaching them all the stuff I already knew about the UK. Like, I didn't come up with any new ideas. I was just like, hey, this is what we do over there. And they were like, oh, this guy's brilliant. We need to listen to him more often. But it's true. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So those are the books that I would definitely check out. There's another one that's also by Dan Priestley. It's like the next one in line, which is a book called Oversubscribed. And the idea of oversubscribed is marketing and getting your business to a place where you are oversubscribed. You have more customers that want your services than can afford to pay for it, or that you can have capacity for. And, there's an example in the book of, there's a business that launches I think they were a marketing agency, and they had 0 clients. They had very little budget, and they took out a print ad in a newspaper. And they said, thank you for everybody that applied to be one of our customers. Our waiting list is now closed. However, if you would like to be reconsidered again in the next month's time, we will be reopening for a select number of people. And it was that mentality of fear of missing out that people were like, well, I never even heard about this. I'm going to get involved with these guys next time. who got them and I didn't. And it was that whole environment. So I'm a big fan of his work, and I would definitely check out those books.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
So I'm kind of curious along those lines. If I can, let's suppose I'm hearing this as a total beginner, and actually I'm thinking of this in terms of trying to sell a book, but we're going to jump into the business mindset. Suppose it's a business, but suppose that you're a nobody and you're just getting started. How do you find those first 2 people with the 50,000, that you need? How do you make those connections? I guess, how did you? You said you've been podcasting already. How did you get to the point where you could actually reach out to someone and they would take you seriously?
I think it's a really good question. So when I say I'd been podcasting before, I'd been in sports podcasting. So it was nothing to do with business at all. I'd been monetizing it, and I'd actually sold 2 sports podcasting networks by that point. But the number one lesson that had taught me was, I can make money and build relationships with people that I've never been in the same room as. It's just about finding common ground and having a conversation. So my initial strategy is still one that we use to this day, and it's a very simple strategy. I made a list of the top 100 companies that I wanted to work with, and I invited each of their CEOs onto my podcast. And I said, I want to ask you 2 questions. Number 1, who are you, and tell me about your journey? And that's a good one to start with, because everybody loves to talk about themselves. So there's a big tick already. It's like, yeah, I'll come talk about myself. And then the second one is, who is your business? Who does it help? And where's it going in the future? And they're paid to talk about their business. So unless they are a serious introvert with social anxiety and they're going to freak out at the prospect of doing a podcast interview with you, there is no good reason for them not to have a conversation with you. And if you spend 60 to 90 minutes, take this the other way, take the whole podcasting thing out of it for a minute. If I was to give you 60 to 90 minutes one-on-one conversation with a CEO of one of your dream clients, how confident are you that something's going to come from that? Now, if I do that 50 to 100 times, how much business are you going to win off the back of that? How many people are they going to be able to refer you on to? You know, one of the most powerful questions in podcasting is, who else do you know that can help me with this? And each one turns into 3 or 4 referrals of people that they know, like, and trust that you're also likely to resonate with. And at that point, you know, there's no need to ever do a cold call again. There's no need to try and figure out this email marketing or social media or Facebook. Or I say this to accountants and things all the time. How are you going to sell accountancy services on a 30-second Instagram post? Like, you're just not. But if you spend time building relationships with people, and I'm not talking weeks, I'm not even talking days in most scenarios. I'm going to give you an hour to an hour and a half to build a relationship with somebody. And if you resonate with that person, don't try and force a sale on them. Don't try and shove something down their throat. Just sometimes an open invitation to say, I've really enjoyed this. I don't know whether you're feeling the same. I would love to do business together if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, Phil, who can you introduce me to?
Lots of people, brother. We'll definitely do it off air. But this is what I mean. This is the joy of this. It's like when you resonate with somebody, you ask that question. But the one little hint that I would give people is that question works all the time. So only do it with the people who you actually resonated with, because otherwise you'll get 3 or 4 recommendations for people who you won't resonate with from somebody that you didn't resonate with.
Yeah,
It's pretty simple.
Hey, we're pretty awkward on this show, so it's going to be screwy either way.
You know what, though? I love the whole conversation. I really do. I mean, I think so many people try and, you know, going back to the Bob Proctor thing, they have this paradigm of how they need to behave in work and how they need to behave in a sales call and how they need to build a relationship with a client. Like, some of my favorite clients, I was going to swear there, they take the mick out of me. I'm trying to think what else I could say, but like they really
Mick.
take yeah, neither do I. Well, I can't swear. So, but they do, like, they rip me, and they'll make jokes, and I make jokes about them, and because that's my personality. So if you can't handle me kind of having a bit of a laugh and a joke with you, then we probably shouldn't be working together. So actually, this kind of format where you're having a conversation with somebody and you put them on the spot and you say, you know, so you're talking on your website about how you've had such a successful career over the last 20 years, and you've talked about all the highs that you've had over the last 2 years. You know, what was the worst moment for you? When was the day that you were eating chicken noodles in your kitchen, wondering whether you completely lost the plot? You know, talk to me about that moment, because the point is that there are people in that moment right now, and they need to hear how you got there. I mean, that's one of my criticisms of a lot of these coaches and things, is that, you know, it's like, I was sleeping in my car and I was bankrupt and now I'm a multimillionaire. And it's like, whoa, don't skip that bit. That bit's really important. Like, I need to know how you did that bit.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes because you get caught up in what's going on with the show, and then there's these questions that blow your mind. And you're like, man, I would have said that if I had remembered the question that I had in my head, which I got to write down half the stuff I want to say sometimes, but
I think that, like, back to that authenticity, I think that's that's one of the things that's just so awesome and freeing about having your own business and having your own podcast, right? And just being able to be yourself and to do your own thing. And I was actually shooting a marketing video last week, and it just kind of, everything came together for me in this moment, because this is somebody that I have some history with. And we were actually, it's a flooring company, and we're doing a sale this month on carpet that is like resistant to pet stains. And so we're like, well, how should we market this? Anyway, they have chickens and dogs. So we've got chickens and dogs in the showroom, and like, the blooper reel on this thing is so epic. And there was just this moment where I just kind of went, I'm getting paid good money to goof off in the showroom and capture this. I'm going to do this killer campaign for them that's going to make them a lot of money. And we're just all being ourselves and having fun and all making money doing it. Like, I wish more people could just Like, I don't know where you're at, but if you can just believe that that is possible, that you can sit on a podcast and make money, or that you can goof off and get bloopers with animals and who knows what's happening, and it doesn't have to be whatever you think it has to be. You know, it can be
No,
so
I
much
love
more.
that so much. I mean, do you know what? You've really touched on an important point there, it's something I always try and say to people, which is, it doesn't have to look the way you think it has to look. And when you get out of your own way, you start to see doors opening and life and the universe giving you opportunities, whether you want to call that God, whatever. Like, people start coming into your life when they're supposed to. But if you're so focused on walking down this one path, because that's the decision that it has to look like this, I'm going to get a Forbes article written and then I'm going to speak on this stage. Well, what if Forbes never write about you, but Entrepreneur put you on the front page and say, this guy's a genius? Is that a failure because Forbes didn't write about you? Like, it doesn't have to look that way.
Yeah, totally.
I love it, dude.
Okay, so I am curious now. So we're talking podcasting, and you mentioned being able to make money at it. So I am curious. Talk about podcasts for business. Should every business be having a podcast? Is this what's the takeaway here?
If every business had a podcast, it would be harder for me to do business. Because I use podcasting to help people become an influencer in their space. And if everybody has one and everybody's doing the same thing, then it just becomes another version of social media, which is where everybody's trying to figure out Facebook advertising and everybody's trying to compete on budget for pay-per-click. So actually, I quite like the fact that every business doesn't. Should every business? Yeah, probably. I just hope they don't. Is my honest answer from a selfish perspective. But
I'm with you on that one. I'm right there. Just
yeah, I mean, I'm just being honest. Yeah, it's going to make my life harder if you do. But the reality is that, I had somebody the other day who was saying to me, look, the problem is I'm a real introvert. Like, I'm not a podcaster. Like, I think they're an architect. And he was like, I do this. Like, I don't want to be a podcaster. And he's like, that's why I hired a sales director, because he's got the gift of the gab. I was like, well, you've just answered your own question. Why doesn't your sales director do the podcast for your business? Like, if he's the person you're sending out there to do the relationships, it doesn't have to be you as the business owner. But at the same time, peers like to speak to peers. So if you're trying to sell to the CEO of a company, it's better if you're the CEO of the company. Because then there's no hierarchy thing to worry about. You're just having a peer-to-peer genuine conversation, and that's how that works. But there's lots of ways to monetize a podcast. I have people in our network who charge their guests almost like an infomercial kind of rate to appear and advertise on their show. I have people that like the sponsors route and the advertising route. I personally don't really like the sponsorship route, because then I am kind of beholden to somebody else telling me what they want to see on my podcast. Whereas, like, if I decide I want to not do business for a few weeks and I want to interview a couple of spiritual coaches about their journey that way, I can, because it's my podcast and I've got no one telling me I can't. But if you've got a sponsor and they're paying to speak to a business audience, then you bringing in, some spiritual people and going on a bit of a spiritual journey with some Indian shaman and stuff, they're going to be a bit like, I'm not sure where this is going and if I'm paying for this. Then there's this really simple way to monetize it, which is monetize the relationships. Build relationships with the people that you want to work with, whether that's potential clients. I've had people use it for recruitment, where they've become like the number one employer of choice. You want to become best known locally, do that. You want to get into more press, interview journalists and production companies. You want to be doing more keynote speaking, speak to more event organizers and help them to sell tickets on your podcast to your audience and build relationships with them. So I've even had it where people have done it with VCs. Like, they pitch their ideas to VCs and they speak to different VCs globally because they're trying to get funding for their business.
What are VCs?
Venture capitalists.
Okay.
So, like, they'll go to venture capitalist firms and say, listen, I would love to bring you on, talk about how you choose the people that you invest in, some of your success stories, because it will help spread your message. And I'd love to share with you my idea about what we're working on and get some pointers from you. Some of that will result in immediate cash. Some of that will result in, actually, I'm interested, but if you did this, this, and this, then I'd be really interested. Now they have the action points and the blueprint that's going to help them to achieve that next level of success. Like, again, it goes back to, doesn't have to look the way you think it has to look. Go and find the people who already have these answers and build your relationship and those networks with those people.
I just got to interrupt because John's always asking the question. I'm telling him, John, the money's there, man. Go get it. And he's like, dude, shut up. It's like, you're crazy. And what you just said, Phil, is a 100% perfect answer for the question that John didn't ask you, which is like, everybody's there with the money. They're waiting for John to have him on this podcast, make a pitch, because they're like got their checkbook. They just need somebody to write it to, right? And it's
Yes,
just
sir.
that out of the box thinking. That's great. You can call it simple if you want to, but let me ask one other thing about the business podcast, because you just kind of ran through a ringer quite easily. I thought of different approaches
Mhm.
to a podcast. Now, John and I love to just sit here and kind of make fun of each other on ours, but I suspect when you're coaching people about, hey, yeah, start a podcast, do you have like a list of what you just went through, or do you give somebody a real reason to start one, or how do you sell it to people?
It's a good question. I don't. I introduce it and they sell it to themselves. So typically, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way either, but
No,
it's like
sure.
if
I
your
love it.
business revolves around building relationships with people, then this is going to work for you. So I don't have to kind of sit here and say, right, for you, I think this is going to be the best approach. It's more, because it's coaching work. It's not like teacher student. It's like we're in this together, and you tell me what you want to get out of this, and I'll give you some suggestions, and you tell me which one resonates the most with you, and we'll start working on that one. And if we find that in 6 months' time that no longer feels right and we want to change it, then we change it, because I say all the time, make more decisions with your heart and less with your head, because your head doesn't know any more than you do. So you sat there trying to figure this out isn't going to help you at all. Whereas if it feels right, you're probably on the right track. So I mean, I have a list of them. Of course I do, but it's not like I present them to people and say, right, which one of these do you want? Because 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't know anyway. It's more a case of, I have people come to me. I have a client who's using it to win clients. He's based in New Zealand. And just the other day, he said, I'd really like to start speaking at more events, especially now they're virtual. And I said, oh, that's all you do now is invite on event organizers to help them sell tickets on your thing. And he was like, that's genius. And I was like, no, it's actually common sense. Like if you want to get booked on more speaking engagements, you speak to the people who do the booking. And instead of thinking about it from your perspective, which is I want to get booked on a show, or I want to get booked on this TV or radio show, or to speak at this event, right? Well, think about what they're trying to do. What is that person trying to do? Well, right now, they're desperately trying to take an in-person event and make it virtual, which brings its own challenge. So they're also trying to attract a wider audience, because they no longer have to think about just attracting people in a 90-minute drive of the exhibition center. They can now attract people globally. So having a wider audience is going to help. And they're trying to sell tickets. They're trying to sell sponsorship. So you saying, hey, I have an audience over here in New Zealand, Mr. Guy in California, that usually wouldn't be able to come to your show. I'd love to bring you on and talk about what you're doing, discuss this. Maybe we could sell some tickets for you. I could introduce you to some people potentially who could be interested in some sponsorship. If you're interested in opening up that overseas, let's spend an hour getting to know each other. And, at the end of that show, if they haven't mentioned it, don't be afraid to say, look, send me the link so I can send this out for you. I'd love to send it out to my network. I'd be really interested in getting involved with this. So if there is anything that you think I'd be suitable for, whether that's a workshop or a speaking engagement, and 9 times out of 10, they'll go, oh, actually, yeah, we are still booking speakers. That'd be great. Thank you so much. And now you're speaking at this big event, and you're going to get the media write-ups that come from it, and you're going to get the credibility that comes from it, and all the clients that approach you because they heard your talk. And it just came from a very simple process of reverse engineering what it is you're trying to do. And that, believe it or not, that's the number one problem that most businesses have, that I find, is they have no idea where they're trying to go. And if you don't know where you're trying to go, A, how do you know when you get there? And B, how are you ever going to get there? So, I say that podcasting is the vehicle. My coaching and my strategy services, that's the route planning. I'm going to tell you the best route to go, the best restaurants to stop and eat at, the places where you got to get off and take a selfie because there's nice scenery there. That's my bit. but you have to be able to tell me where you're trying to go. Because if you turn up to that coaching session and go, I don't know where I want to take this business, I don't know what I want to achieve with it, can you help me get there? The answer is no.
Yeah. So, but it also, if you flip it around, being on podcast is just as valuable as running your own, wouldn't you say?
Massively. So I always say it's two sides of the same coin, which is you win clients and build relationships by doing your own podcast. You get recognized more as an influencer and an authority by appearing on other people's podcasts. And the reason for that is when you're hosting a show, it's about extracting as much information from your guest as possible to empower and enrich your audience. So it's not an opportunity for you to just talk about the work that you do all the time, because otherwise, why are they there? It's like you're pitching to them on air. Whereas when you go on other people's shows, you are there for that reason. You're there to add value to their audience. So they're going to ask you questions about your business. And that's the platform for you to say, this is who we are, and this is what we do, and this is how it helps. So I don't see them as separate things. In fact, every single one of our clients, whether that's a coaching client or whether that's one of our done for you clients, they do both. In fact, they do both in equal number. They produce the same number of podcasts and appear on the same number each month because the two go hand in hand.
So about how long do you think it should take to get on other people's podcasts? I mean, how do you build that relationship as a guest?
So it's kind of like I use sporting analogy a lot, which is, you can't just kind of go, I want to be on the Joe Rogan podcast and expect Joe to go, yeah, sure, come on down, random stranger I've never heard of. Like
we're in
have
Texas, it might happen. I don't know.
Well, there you go. But
I tried it; it doesn't work. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, well, I tried Tony Robbins and he didn't even respond to me, so I get it. But in fact, ironically, I've since been introduced to his team by somebody else who was also from that movie. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, it comes from somebody else. So I would say that you scale up. Okay, there are so many podcasts out there at the moment that would be interested in hearing from your opinion as a guest. And once you've got a number of podcasts under your belt and you're feeling more comfortable with how to be a guest and how to conduct yourself and how different people host and all that kind of stuff, now you can take that to the next level. So imagine it this way. Imagine you start doing local podcasts, then you scale that up to local radio, then you scale that up to national podcasts, then national radio. Now you can start talking to television and you'll start doing local news channels. Then you can start looking at national news channels. Now start having some serious fun internationally. Now you don't have to do it exactly that way. You can jump all over the world. You can do small podcasts globally, medium podcasts globally. But it's like once you've got number of C grade podcasts under your belt, now you can go and tackle the Bs. Once you've got a number of Bs, the As will start to look at you and consider you. And as soon as you've got some of them under your belt, now you're talking, because they're going to look at that and go, I'm not. It's like when you're in a relationship, you're always more attractive to somebody when you're in a relationship than when you're single. And it's because somebody else has already taken the risk on you. It's like, I've been single for 8 years. The first thing that goes on there is like, oh, something going on with that guy. Like there's a reason. It's like, yeah, I'm in this relationship. It's brand new. It's 8 months. It's like, okay, 8 months. So someone's taken a relationship on them. It wasn't a one night fling, but it's also soon enough that I might still have an in. It's the same kind of thing with podcasting. If enough of these podcasters in each category see you appearing on other people's, you're good to go. But that's one thing I would point out is a lot of people don't have a strategy with that. So they confuse potential people who will book them on their show. Because if I look through your list of podcasts, like there's a B there, there's a load of C's, there's that one A, but they were like 6 months ago, and then you've been doing C's again since. So were you not comfortable on the environment with an A? Did they not like you? Did the episode not go well? So I shouldn't make the same mistake. So it's like your resume. If you're a job hopper, people start to question you. So your guest appearances have to make sense. The story and the strategy has to make sense.
Okay, so that's resonating with me in a really uncomfortable way, just because I think that I have a history since, so my book came out in June, and I worked with a small publishing house, and so they kind of didn't really sell it for me. They were great to work with, great editors, all of that, but it landed on me more than I realized. And when I look back at the interviews that I've done in the last, what are we at now? 5 months. some of them I didn't check first.
Mm.
So like I would end up on a podcast that appeared to have good graphics and like they were fine and the process was good. And then I would get there and it's like this 18-year-old kid in his mom's basement and there's,
Yep.
and it's like, well, that happened, you know.
Do you know what? There's nothing wrong with that in as much as like you got to kiss some frogs sometimes. Like you never know when that 18-year-old kid's going to suddenly get signed up by Spotify or whatever. But at the same time, you know, I do agree with you. And we do a lot of that work actually with our guest booking stuff in terms of a digital book tour. And one of the things that I always say with that digital book tour is reverse engineer it. Who has the audience that you're trying to sell that book to? Who already has that audience on a podcast? Now go and talk to them. And, you know, I don't know whether you've ever seen the film The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. But, you know, he didn't have time to be doing that call list. When everyone else was starting off with the junior person and working their way up, he flipped it on its head completely. He went straight to the guys at the top and worked his way down. And that's what I suggest people do with a podcast. It's like, don't just go for the D's and the E grades. You can rule those out completely. Try, you know, you're probably not going to get onto the A grades yet. Oprah's not going to bring you on the show to come and talk about your new book. Not just yet, you know, but go for the B grade guys. And then if some of them say yes, then don't even bother with the C. Just do your B and build up to the A. But if the B's aren't biting, then go down to the C and then work your way up, because you're going to know two things. You're going to know where you're at in terms of who's interested in talking to you in terms of the subject, but you're also going to be able to judge whether your pitch is wrong, because that may well be it. The way that you are pitching yourself in that book and appearing on a show, that might be what's wrong. I mean, you think about from a journalist perspective, how many press releases do they receive on a weekly basis? If you haven't really captured their attention in the first 20, 30 seconds, you're screwed. So it may well just be the way that it's being pitched. It may be that you're sending too much. It may be that you're sending too little. It may be that you're being a bit humble and it's just like, hey, I wrote this book. It's about this. If you're interested in me coming on a podcast, then let me know. Well, what does that do? Like, who are you empowering? Why should people read this book? Why is this important to my audience? Like, there's a really important thing that I always question in every strategy that we do. And it's called my so what section. And my so what section is, okay, so you've told me about the book. You've told me who it helps. So what? Like, why should we talk? Like, and if there isn't a so what in there, which is, so what this means for you, Phil, is your audience is this, if I'm not mistaken, and this is how it's going to add value to them. And I'd love to come and do that for you. There's my so what. So you're getting signed up every day of the week. But if there isn't one there, don't expect me to fish around and think about the so what, because that might be one of 50 of those emails that I've got that day.
Yeah. Love it. Love it.
You must buy your mics off Amazon to be able to drop this many in 1 hour.
No, he gets them for free. People are.
He gets them for free. Okay, that's how they do it. Right. Expendable.
That's why I'm okay to drop them. No, do you know what? I love this stuff though, and this was all trial and error. Like I cringe when people on like radio and stuff call me like a podcast expert, because it's like, I don't like the phrase expert, because, you know, I might have been an expert yesterday, but today the market has changed and who knows. But the other reason I don't like that is I came at this from a service provider's perspective, and that's what a lot of people have to remember. You know, I still own service-based businesses. I found these business cheat codes because I didn't understand how to do the other stuff. So I get it. Like, I've been there. This pain has been my pain, and the coaching came about because people were coming to me to say, can you teach us how you did that bit? And actually the answer at first was no, because there's a difference between doing it and figuring out why something worked that way and what the blueprint was. And that took a good sort of 6 to 8 months of really soul searching and looking through, like, well, how did I end up on that stage, and how did I end up speaking there, and really kind of reverse engineering it. And then, as we've done here, you start then saying, well, I got onto the stage because I spoke to the event organizers, and people go, it's brilliant. And it's like, common sense, surely. But we're all so busy trying to focus on these really difficult solutions. And I'm going to buy another sales automation tool because that's going to sort my problem. And if I just record some more videos and get some more copy for my website, I'll get my VSL sorted, and then the leads are just going to fall in. And it's like, no, it's about relationship building. And somewhere along the line that got lost. And if you partner with people who you can enhance their business, they can enhance yours, you're happy to refer business to one another, you may never need a VSL. You may never need a landing page, because if you have enough of those relationships of people saying, I love this girl, she's amazing, like this is what she does for me. Actually, she's got a book out. Let me send you a link to her book. You know, you saying you're good is powerful. Somebody else saying you're good is 100 times more powerful.
For sure.
So you're gonna talk about us on social media then, right? You're gonna say we're the favorite, right?
Of course, man. Listen, but this is what I genuinely like when I share, when the podcast comes out, I share it with my network, and I always put a comment on it. And you can, sounds awful this, but you can tell the ones I've really enjoyed, because some of them I'm just kind of like, thanks so much for having me on, guys, and that's it. Like other shows, it's like, actually, I really enjoyed this conversation, particularly pay attention to this bit, and like go check out their other interviews. And when I see other interviews come up, I'm kind of happy to share it and like it and comment on it. Whereas other people, it's like, okay, cool, you did another episode. Good for you.
The last time someone told us that they really enjoyed our show, she ended up stalking the show, and now she's on the show.
It worked for me though. It's all about relationships.
It's all about relationships.
Now they can't get rid of me.
Hey, well, let's do this deciding factor. I'm excited.
Well, I got one more question before we do that. Though.
All right.
I know. Half an hour. Here we go. So Phil, we had talked on the phone prior to you coming on the show, and you had told us some of your successes from actually having your podcast. How long did you spend till you had that big breakout moment that we talked about before? And can you share it with listeners?
Of course I can. I don't actually remember which one it was, because there's been quite a few things, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I guess if we're talking about the event in China, are we talking about that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you might be. So realistically, I probably had my podcast for about a year, maybe, when that happened. But it wasn't like that. The thing with that was, and I'll explain what happened with that scenario, but the thing that you have to understand is that didn't happen because I had an established podcast at that point. That just happened because I built a relationship with that person at the right time. Like I could have done that 5 podcasts in and the result would have still been the same. So what had happened was I'd been approached by a client who was a marketing agency based here in the UK. And they wanted to break into the virtual reality space, and they kind of wanted to break into that space because they could see it was becoming a thing, like virtual and augmented reality, but they didn't have a clue about it. So they came to me and were like, look, you seem to know everybody. Can you help us find out about this stuff and get us sort of on the global stage for what we do? So me being me, I just thought, well, I don't know anything about virtual and augmented reality. So what am I going to do? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to podcast with people who do, and I'm going to ask them, what's going on in the VR industry? What's wrong with it? Why aren't people buying headsets? And, all these kind of messages started to come through. It's about gamification. People have to be able to play with it before they'll buy it. Gary Vaynerchuk once famously said, marketers ruin everything because they find out where you're looking and then advertise there. Well, VR had it the wrong way around. They were trying to advertise before anybody was looking there. And no one's going to buy a $600 Oculus Rift, so that you can advertise to them. Like that's not what they're going to do. So I decided to check out where all the major events were. And there was a huge one happening in Shanghai, which was done by Mobile World Congress, GSMA event. And it was about, I don't know, it's like 9 weeks, 12 weeks until the actual event. So it's pretty close, this event. And I decided, okay, I'm going to get involved with the event organizer. Same, I live by what I say. I follow my own, I eat my own medicine. So I called the guy up and I said, I'd love to bring you on a podcast. We're doing loads more work in the virtual reality space. Here's some interviews I did recently with people in the VR space. I actually noticed that one of them's already speaking at your event. It would be great to have a chat with you about why people should turn up. You still trying to sell tickets? And it was like, yes, we are still trying to sell tickets. We've got I think it was 200,000 people already signed up for this 3-day event. It's going to be huge. It's going to be the biggest VR event in Asia. Let's have the conversation. So got on really well with this guy. And I kind of kept commenting on the things that I kind of learned through speaking through other people, the gamification stuff and what I think businesses are doing wrong and all this kind of stuff. And he said, okay, will you come to China? And I was like, okay. And he's like, I want you to speak for us. And he said, I need to kind of work some stuff out. He said, now there's usually a fee associated with this. He said, but what I'll do is I'll waive the fee and I'll see if I can get you some money for this. So what that ended up becoming was we got paid a small amount as like a fee to speak. They paid for our hotel. And I actually got the British government to pay for me to go. Like they paid for our flights because they didn't have anybody representing them over there. So it was kind of like if you mention in your talk that the British Chamber of Commerce have sent you, like we'll pay for your flights. And it was like,
yes,
sweet, man, this is cool. So I'm being paid to go to this thing. And like in the weeks ahead of it, they bumped us up from like one of their stages to their main stage. So I ended up sandwiched in between Sony and Microsoft.
yes.
And I have to be honest, I had a real tack of imposter syndrome stood side stage. I was practically having like an anxiety attack thinking, oh my days, like any minute now, 2,000 CEOs and senior execs in the tech industry are about to realize that I don't have a clue what I'm talking about.
Love it.
But, it was just presenting to them what I'd learned from other people and what other people had said. So I did this whole presentation and I had no idea how it went. I opened it with a joke. And a little bit known to me, everybody was getting this translated from English into Chinese. So there was a delay in them laughing. So nobody laughed. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to be really bad.
I love it.
And then about 30 seconds later, they all laughed. And that was a bit that wasn't supposed to be funny. So I couldn't tell whether they were laughing at me or not. It was a real sort of hot water lesson, like in at the deep end kind of thing. And what ended up happening was I came off stage. This is the gospel truth, right? I'm coming down the steps and this big guy who looks very Russian comes just sort of beaming towards me. And I'm thinking, this is going to be embarrassing. Security is about to throw me out in front of all these people. And that was the only logic I could come to as to why security weren't stopping this guy from like running towards me. Because the speakers section was kind of just like where we were sat was just kind of off the stage in the center at the front, like cordoned off from everybody else, like with some sort of VIPs, which was funny on its own. So this guy walks up to me and says, I have to go now, but I've really enjoyed your talk. We should do business together. And he slaps my hand and shakes my hand and he puts a business card in my hand and then walks off. So I sit down and I'm still kind of shaking at this point, A, from the talk and B, because I thought I was about to be assassinated. And I checked the card and he's the senior vice president for Microsoft Asia. He is the guy that Bill Gates chose single-handedly to go over and fix Microsoft's HoloLens project in Asia. Like this guy is the biggest of the big fish. We then went on to have conversations with people at the back of the room who were coming up and we were getting business cards left, right, and center, which is pretty cool. But we won $150,000 worth of business for the marketing agency and consulting work in the first half an hour, 45 minutes of having come off stage. And I was convinced I'd completely ballsed it up. I was completely convinced. And there was another part of me that was like, why are people like so impressed that I'm just telling them stuff that seems to be like, did you not ask your own customers this? Like, that's all I did. I asked them, they told me, I told you, you think I'm a genius. Like, I don't understand how this happened. I haven't invented anything. You guys are inventing stuff. You guys have invented augmented reality. You're using artificial intelligence and you think I'm a genius for speaking to your customers. Like, this is like Twilight Zone stuff. But what I remember immediately after, I was kind of getting brought on TV and there's a big magazine in Asia called Campaign Asia, which is one of their biggest tech magazines. And I ended up as the front cover spread. Like Phil Pelucha summed it up best when he said, and then there's one of my quotes from the talk about like leaving your customers with an experience that that leaves them wanting more. Immersing your customers in an experience that leaves them wanting more. That was the quote. And my phones were ringing off the hook and I'm getting like Fox and NBC and all these people contacting us and Korea Live and saying, VR expert, Phil Pelucha. And I'm going, VR expert? I don't have a Scooby-Doo about VR. And I'm suddenly thinking, you're calling me an expert because you've made this assumption. And that's where a lot of the coaching work. So this would have been about 2017. That's where a lot of the coaching work really started to grow from, because I realized that I was now being called and recognized as an influencer in an industry that I knew nothing about. So I started to kind of reverse engineer the tools that had got me there and start to think, well, if you can get somebody into an influencer space, an authority space that knows nothing about an industry, imagine what you could do if you take these great business owners who really do know their stuff, but they're so busy dealing with the stresses and day-to-day of running their business that nobody ever gets to hear about the amazing things that they've got to say, which is where the message comes from about us becoming an authority broadcasting network. I want to be that spotlight for business owners, not just to teach them the skills to become, financially free and work with the customers they want to work with, but then to be recognized as the influencer that they already are, but they need more people to know, like, and trust them. And that's really where this all came from.
Wow. That was a crazy story the first time. It's still crazy hearing it.
Yeah.
It was crazy to live it. I mean, and there's a whole nother podcast in the journey back because we got caught in a typhoon. My flight from Shanghai to Beijing got cancelled, and the British government did the flights on the cheap. So if I missed my flight, I was going to have to buy another one out of my pocket. So we had to get a train from Shanghai to Beijing, which is like 6 hours. And the train was fully booked because of the typhoon. And we bribed these guys who basically like smuggled us onto a train. This is a true story. In fact, I thought I was being robbed at one point because he picked up my suitcase and legged it towards this train. And I just thought he was doing a runner with my suitcase. So I went running after him. I was about to lump the guy when I got to him, only for him to hold the door open and go, "There you go, you can come in now." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." He was trying to be nice to me. Thank God I didn't punch him in the back of the head. And these police came on and they were like, "With tickets." And I was like, "Oh, we are in so much trouble." And then one of the stewardesses came over, or whatever you refer to them as, like the train assistant came over. She took our passports out of us and she starts pointing at my wallet. So I got my wallet out. I had no idea what to do. So I just kind of held it up like a proper noob, like, "Here, take your bribe." And they opened my wallet, took some cash out, put it into my passport, handed the passport to the police chief, who opened it, took the money out, put it in his pocket, looked at us, kind of scoffed and went off. So we essentially bribed our way onto a train. So honestly, there's another story in that. And then the hilarious thing was we bribed our way onto this train so that we could get there in time. And there was another train we could have caught just after, but it would have got us in 2 hours after our train. And after our flight left. And we could have got on that train because as we arrived in Beijing, the same typhoon that had stopped us flying from Shanghai had now hit Beijing, and our flight got delayed by 6 hours. So all of that stress and bribing the police didn't even need to happen in the first place.
Nice.
So China is especially with coronavirus now, I'm going to agree with your president on this. I don't think China is going to be on my to-do list or list of places I really want to rush back to anytime soon. It was an incredible place to do business, but outside of that exhibition hall, it was the weirdest trip I've ever had in my entire life.
All right, let's get ready for this, guys. Are y'all ready?
Ready.
All right, the deciding factor.
Now it's time for our deciding factor.
All right, so the question of the day is, can podcasting be the new hidden marketing tool that businesses should be using? So let me start out with, I don't want all of y'all to get into podcasting just like Phil doesn't, because I want to be at the number one spot, not you, Joe Rogan too, if you're listening. But, when we were talking about it, it all comes back to that relationship like you talked about. And, relationships, nothing new for marketing, right?
Mm-mm.
Alton plays with relationships all the time in order to do business on his end. I do help in sales aspect at our company that I work for, and it straight up 100% relationships. However, I will have to say podcasting, since I've started it with Alton, I have seen what you've talked about to me on the phone and here on this podcast, and podcasting, I really think, is a very important gem that no one really knows about, and they're scared of it. I've talked to other friends and family members, and right away it's like, I can't talk to anybody on the podcast. No one's going to listen to me. I didn't think anybody was going to listen to me either. Apparently we have people listening to us. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. So I really do think podcasting has way too much to offer any business. It's just a strategy, and we would definitely recommend getting with someone like Phil here, and having them walk you through, coaching you to what exactly you need to do for your specific niche, because everybody's different. I mean, I would struggle if I had my own company and tried to think of the same thing too. So that's my opinion on it. What about
Love
you,
it.
Phil?
Me? Oh, well, obviously I agree with it. Yeah, I'm completely with you. Like, I think you're absolutely right. So as I said, I describe it more as the vehicle to kind of get there. Um, Digital relationship building is the thing that I actually credit for. So I kind of call that my superpower. Like, I use a phrase a lot, which is, if you put amazing people in a room together, incredible things are going to happen. My skill is just teaching people how to use that room digitally. And podcasting has been a phenomenal tool to really be able to do that. And I come across the same thing, dude. I come across so many people. It's like people wouldn't listen to me. I'd have to plug it to all my friends and family, and even they're gonna get sick of listening to it. I mean, my wife probably has listened to a handful of my podcasts, and I've done over 10,000 hours of podcasting now. And her reason is, I hear enough of your voice. Like, I don't need to listen, like in my off time, put headphones in and listen to more of you talking. And so I fully respect that. But, it's funny. When I first started my podcast, and people always find this really surprising when I say it, I could not care less if anybody was listening to it, because I wasn't using it to get listeners. I was using it to build relationships with people that I was learning from and that were going to be good for my business. And if other people wanted to listen to that and learn from those lessons as well, good for you. But you weren't the people I was doing it for. I was doing it for me. And somebody once gave me the nickname, and it was, I've been given lots of nicknames. Many of them I'd rather forget. But this one I actually quite like. Somebody said, it's like Napoleon Hill for podcasting. And I was like, I love that name, like that. But you know what? It's probably not far wrong. It's like he had the right idea. It's like, learn from him. For those of you that are wondering what I'm talking about, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That book is essentially just interviewing some of the most wealthy and successful people and trying to understand how they got there, how their mindset works, and what they're all about. And that's one of the things I loved about podcasting, was I could meet with people from all over the world, and I can learn lessons, and I can almost have mini mentorship and coaching sessions in a 60 to 90 minute session with somebody. And it's such a powerful tool that can be used for so many things. I mean, I've not just used it for business. I've used it to get the last 2 years worth of Champions League final tickets. Wow. Yeah, dude, I get upgrades on flights. First class, baby. I'm not paying for that. I'm paying for economy, and then I'm getting bumped. Nice. Hotel rooms. I'll tell a true story. I know. In fact, I can't believe I'm saying this on air. We booked to go to this hotel in Egypt. It was this gorgeous 5-star hotel. And I considered getting one of the villas, but like, it was just so much more expensive than the rooms. And I was just like, I can't justify it, because we're going to spend most of the time on the beach anyway. So from one of my email accounts, it wasn't even me. So it was like, I think I'd actually borrowed the account of one of our press officers, and I was like, I'm going to email the hotel. Just let me use your account. So I emailed them and I was like, listen, he's coming down. He'd be really interested to do an interview with the owner. We heard that you recently refurbed some of your villas. Would love to see some of those and maybe take some pictures that we could include with the podcast. And they came back and were like, we'd love to do an interview. If you could just tell him to let us know when he's at reception. Asked to speak to Aladdin. True story. Asked to speak to Aladdin, who is the general manager. We've actually complimentarily bumped you up for those 2 weeks to one of the villas, as one of them was available. That way you'll be able to take all the shots you want. You'll be able to get a picture in the morning. You'll be able to see the sunset. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I'm having so much fun with this thing. And do you want to hear the irony? Like, it got to the day where we were supposed to be doing the podcast, and he was like, I've got a really croaky voice. Like, do you mind if we like rearrange this when I'm feeling a bit better? He never did. So I got upgraded and never even had to do the podcast.
Man, I'm gonna have to start doing this, Alton. Come on, we need to go somewhere and take advantage of this.
We need to get smart enough to leverage. That's for sure.
I did a manipulated one with the press. Like, I was going back to South Africa, and I messaged this politician and I said, look, I'm working with this business over in the UK. They're looking to do more business in the area. I'm going to be down here. I'd love to talk to you about how we could potentially work together. And he was like the trade minister. international trade minister. That's what he was. So he said, we'll go for lunch and we'll go to this place. And he named this place in Johannesburg that's really difficult to get into. And he's like, do you want me to sort it or can your people sort it? And I didn't want to kind of sound like my people couldn't sort it. So I was like, no, we'll sort it. It's fine. So again, press officer email to the reservations manager. Listen, I'm going to be bringing in this minister. So we're going to need a table where we can talk. And it's like, no problem. Don't worry about the 3-week waiting list. We'll just get you in because you're coming in with a minister. One step further to make sure I got something I really wanted from it, I let a business journalist know from the local paper that I was going to be there doing an international trade talk with their trade minister. So we got snapped in the pictures outside the restaurant and ended up in the paper.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, it's like the puppet master, my friend.
Yes.
Man.
But do you know what? You got to play the game. You got to play the game. And this is what I love teaching my customers to do. And many of them are the same. They're like, no one's going to listen to me. I can't do that. I'm not that important. And you know why I do all this stuff? Because I'm just an average Joe. I'm just a normal guy who found that this was something that worked for me. And I truly get a kick out of teaching other people how to do it. So yes, and double yes. If your business needs you to build relationships with people, podcasting will work for you.
Oh, man. What you say, Barbara?
Well, this has been an amazing hour to me, but it's the if, like, there's no if. If you have a business, then you need relationships, right? Like if you're breathing right now, you need relationships. And so I like how you're describing podcasts as the vehicle, because I think, and that whole coming at it sort of through the back door, the reverse engineering of it, because you're right. I know a lot of people that would not even consider, starting the conversation about going on a podcast. But when you put it in terms of, they have something that you need to know, you have something that they need to know. If I think of it more just relationally, then this just becomes the vehicle that gets us there. And so, is it the new hidden tool? I don't know. I think that relationships, maybe that's what it is that with all the technology, we are finding that actually the core things that make businesses work have always stayed the same. Successful businesses are successful relationships. So I think you're amazing. This is a really cool interview.
Oh, thank you so much. No, it's very kind of you to say, but I completely agree with your answer. I completely agree. It is all about relationships. And whilst I'm sure there are multiple ways of building relationships with people. I'm not saying that my way is the only way. I'm just teaching people the way that I learned how to do it and that I found success with. And that doesn't resonate with you, then don't write a book, become a blogger, do YouTube, whatever it is you want to do, but build those relationships because they're going to be at the heart of everything you do.
Yeah. So I, would love to just echo everything that y'all said, but I'll just try to add the Alton version of it. We talked about being an influencer a little bit. And when we were talking about that word influencer, I've always kind of subscribed to John Maxwell, and that he talks a lot about leadership. And he says a leader is just someone who has influence. And so when I think about podcasting, and I mean, we're talking about relationships, but as a business owner, let's say that we probably want to be leading people as well as that in that business and influencing people to do what's best. And I've found for me, a podcast is like a total hack in a good way. Maybe I should say a shortcut. And it's not a, well, let's work this way. It's almost like if I say I have a podcast, instantly I have credibility. You don't have to know if anyone listens. You don't have to know if I have 100 shows under my belt or one. Like it just almost doesn't matter. It's like, oh, he has a podcast. He must be legit. It's like if you tell somebody you were on TV, they're like, oh, you legit. And I think that is an incredibly powerful thing about podcasting. And I think that that's honestly what scares some people. It's like getting a speaking gig. They're like, oh, you mean public speaking? Well, yeah, that's what it means. It's so powerful. I think it kind of scares some people away. But I also want to mention the idea about Phil, and you said it best, and I didn't get the perfect quote, but basically like, if you're not learning anymore, you're dead, or something to that effect. And
the day you stop learning is the day you stop earning.
Yeah, there you go. So what a podcast has been for me is constant learning. And we may also be building that relationship, but part of that is the learning. So if you want to learn and you want credibility, I think a podcast is an excellent way to do that. And I just want to finish saying that podcasting opened doors that I don't know how in the world I would have even seen those doors or even knew that those doors existed that I could walk through without podcasting. So yeah, amen from me on if you're serious about business and stuff, you should definitely think about it.
Yeah. I tell you what, Phil, it was not only funny, it was entertaining, and I know I've learned a lot from listening to you in the times that I've spent with you, both on air and off air. So if any of the listeners out there have not gained anything from this podcast, man, I don't know what else we can teach you.
Phil is look, let me say one more thing. Phil is the real deal here. He's like come up with some stuff on the fly that we did not prep for him that was quite exceptional. And I love that Barbara said that comment about mic dropping, because that's so legit. This has been great for me, and I'm super grateful to you, Phil.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And this is exactly what I love about podcasting, because like this relationship does not end here with any of you. This relationship will continue with all three of you. I'm absolutely positive of that, because when you resonate with somebody, it just works, and that's what I absolutely love about this. So love the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and I really do hope that your audience have taken away some nuggets that they can bring into their lives and their business that can help them get to the next level.
Oh man. So I want to add some more things that I think we've learned is, Alton, if we ever have a speaking gig or anything, don't, hit anybody in the throat that runs up to us, because they might hand us a postcard. The other thing is I've been upset because I know my mom hasn't listened to any of my podcasts, so you made me feel better that your family hasn't.
Oh yeah. They really do. Although ironically, I'll tell you a funny story, and he might actually be listening to this one, so big shout out to him if he is. I found out my father-in-law listens to my podcast and guest appearances that I'm on. I didn't even know. Like, he's nothing to do with my business. He's in mining, so I have no idea what he gets from them. But I caught up with him like a couple of months ago on the phone, and he was like, I really enjoyed the interview you did with such and such a person. I was like, I didn't know you listened to my show. Like,
I love it.
But yeah, my wife, I could say to her, listen, this is an amazing show. You should go listen. And she'll be like, yeah, maybe later.
That is awesome. One last thing, boxers, where can I get a pair?
Oh, good question. I'll send them to you as soon as I get the box. Believe it or not, they're currently stuck in China because of the quarantine.
Oh, no.
They've been with customs for like 4 months.
Let's edit that out.
Oh dear. So yeah, I could definitely send you the pair of boxes. But yeah, they will be available on our website, which is Billionaires In Boxers, just as soon as I have them in stock.
Yes.
And is that the best way for everybody to get a hold of you and see you on social media and everything?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think there's probably two best ways of doing it are billionairesinboxers.com, nice and simple. Everything's on there. Or indeed, I have a really unusual surname, which is Pelucha, which is spelled Pelucha. So if you just Google Phil Pelucha, you will find all of my social media handles, LinkedIn profiles, all that kind of stuff. Little secret, my media team might be annoyed at me telling you, I only manage the Twitter and my LinkedIn accounts myself because I don't like the rest of them. So if you want to talk to me directly, come and talk to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Failing that, head over and speak to one of my team. I'm sure they'd be happy to help too.
Oh man. Once again, it has been so much fun. Thank you so much. Let's definitely stay in touch.
For sure.
And I don't know what else to add other than, if you're listening, click like and subscribe, guys. I mean, this is just one of many that you can listen to and learn something from. Y'all guys got anything else? Nope.
That was great.
Yeah,
all right.
thanks.
All right, everybody. Say bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.
This has been another episode of The Deciding Factor. giving you food for thought on real life issues. Be sure to click, like, and subscribe to this podcast, as well as all your big social media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to check out our website at thedecidingfactorpodcast.com and give us comments and feedback. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep an open mind.